right, today on the Garlic Marketing Show, we're going to talk about cold email outreach, how to get in connection with your perfect clients using cold mail, an amazing software. I got Jeremy from QuickMail. Jeremy, say hi.
Hi.
And we're going to talk about how to use QuickMail, how to manage cold email campaigns, the simple trick to great emails. When is your list too big for cold email? The factors to getting your email into the inbox, the key metrics to email deliverability, his icebreaker snippet trick. I mean, we've got so much, the importance of market propensity, the easiest first email, the ideal reply rate for cold email, the ideal of using a positive reply rate metric and how to measure it, how to follow up better, and of course, how to use stories in email. Wow, this is going to be a big show. Of course, it's brought to you by videocasestory.com. One of the best things that you can do in all of your marketing is customer stories. Go to videocasestory.com to learn how we can help collect, craft, and deliver those customer stories. All right, let's get started. You know, we're going to talk about how to use customer stories and cold outreach, how to do cold outreach that doesn't get you into spam, how to warm people up, all those cool things. But before we get into it, let's talk a little bit about what QuickMail does and how it works.
Okay, broad topic. So like I keep saying whenever I do a demo to people is I could talk 8 hours about QuickMail because it's a very big product and it ties to a lot of different workflows. But broadly speaking, this is a tool to help you manage all your campaigns and all your campaigns for all your clients. If you're a lead generation agency, for example, so we do have the ability to manage multiple accounts. And in short, you send an email to someone. If that person doesn't reply, then you send a follow-up. And you obviously are in control of your own campaign. You can have multiple follow-ups. You can decide to mix and match with different touch. But that's basically the idea. The idea is to get more replies. So we're in a game of getting you more replies.
Gotcha. And so everyone is probably like, well, that's fine. I'm going to go buy a huge list and just start spamming them and start hitting them up. And I think that's what I think we get those emails. So we think that that's how cold email works. Mm-hmm. And how well can cold email work? Can cold email work?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it does work. I mean, we have plenty of clients that can show you it works extremely well. It's interesting because a few years ago, there was a sort of people going away from cold outreach by email, thinking like, oh, well, this other platform works better or whatever. It was LinkedIn, at the time. And then people come back. It's one of those things that even sometimes it's out of fashion, it always sort of like come back because it's the root. It's not a company that owns emails in a sense. You're in control of whoever you're contacting. So it works very well. It does. The trick for is you have to do it well too, because the floor has been raised in all those years. I remember the time where effectively what you were saying was working. Just buy like a huge list, you send stuff, and people apologize for not answering your first email. That's long gone. It was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I was like, oh, I don't know this person, but it's great. That person's replying to me. Yeah, it's kind of a fun feeling. Not there anymore. So the practice got better. It's a bit like email marketing. At some point, it was a Wild West, and then there was some stuff, the double opt-in that came in and so on, and sort of like stabilized the sort of industry. And now there's a little bit of this phase going on at the moment, so it's interesting.
And when you're doing cold email and you're trying to decide where to get started, right? Where should I start? Because it seems kind of daunting to me. Yeah, I've got this, I know who my ideal clients are, but I don't know even where to start. Where's the first place to just even get started with it?
So good question. There are a couple of ways you can do it. The first one is you don't necessarily have to think this is cold outreach. And if you think simply about outreach by email, you can decide to contact your own clients. Maybe you want to do customer stories, or maybe you want to, thank them for being with you so long or whatever. You will build up a list of whoever you want to contact, and then you start building your campaign. The big trick is to think that you're sending just one email to one person. And that one person needs to be very well defined for you. right? In the case of the customer stories, you're not going to send that to someone who just started the software today, or your product, or your service today, or it's been like 5 years. So you're going to have to build your list one way or another with some criteria. It's no different than the outreach, cold outreach. Like, you will have to build your list. When you were joking, about buying a list, it's very hard to get a list with the exact customer avatar that you actually need. And I would argue that if you got a list of more than 1,000 people, you're probably not refining your list well enough. So I will add more criteria. Try to think, like, if I end up with 12,000 people, I'll say, like, okay, what is some criteria I can do that have this list? So 6,000. And then when you're at 6,000, and you say, okay, what other criteria can I add? And then you keep on doing this until your list is about 1,000. And then you have a pretty good idea of who you want to contact. And then you write for one person, one email. Just write an email, try it out. And if you feel like, I like it, I'd like to send that to more people, then you bring them the automation. I think that's an interesting way to start.
Interesting. Yeah, because I feel like when you say 1,000, people are probably like, either they're like, I don't even have anyone close to 1,000, or there's the people with the big list. They're like, well, I've got 100,000 potential clients, and I want to attack them. So when you're pulling down these criteria, what criteria are you looking for, and how are you doing that with just an email address? Okay,
so the first things is that if your list is bad, your campaign is gonna fail no matter what, right? So it's easier to have a great list, a great offer, people that will crave for your offer, and then having a mediocre type of email. Right. And it's funny because usually it's the opposite. People just try to say, like, oh, yeah, I don't care really too much about the list. Yeah, I'll try SMB, 500 company, whatever. I go for the, I don't know, head of IT or whatever is your target audience. And then they'll spend like so much time crafting their email. It's the wrong way around. So I love the fact that you're asking me, like, what criteria, should I look at? Now you have I'm not the expert in list building. This is actually something I don't like. I have a podcast, another podcast called, what's the name of our podcast? I think it's called Outreach with Jeremy and Jack or something like that, like ridiculous name anyway. And my co-host is actually super good when it comes to list building. So I learned tremendous amount of information from him. But let's help you out here. Like, give me a service that you want to sell to your audience. What service would that be?
Let's say digital marketing.
Well, that's broad one. What is it exactly in digital marketing? Are we talking SEO? Are we talking?
Let's pretend it's video.
Video. Oh, well, okay. That's interesting. So one thing I will do, if you already have clients, I'll pull up my list of clients and I figure out, like, what is the avatar from that? Like, can I get an avatar from my list of clients? Usually you'll end up having, like, low paying clients, high paying clients. So ideally you start with the high paying clients. Maybe you find a couple of things in common, like, oh, maybe for video, maybe they all have a website with more than X number of visitors, and maybe they have a domain rating of more between X and Y. And then you figure out, okay, there is also a certain number of people in the company. So we need to at least have, I don't know, a head of marketing and another marketer, whatever. So you sort of like figure out those sort of criteria. And when you got that, then you do your list. And maybe it's also just in the US or just in Europe. So you also have to figure out that. So when you have a list of clients already, that's much easier to actually come up with a list of good criteria to contact, because it works for those people. And then you can use that in your copywriting by saying, like, hey, we've been using company like yours, such as such and such, which hopefully they should sort of like recognize because they are in similar industry, similar size, similar, maybe that's one of their close or competitors or something like that, right?
Gotcha.
That makes sense. Yeah.
No, it makes complete sense. That and I think so many people don't. I mean, I've talked to so many people that have never refined their email list like that, and then segment it and then do that cold outreach. I talked to tons of agencies that I would probably say 1 out of 50 that I talk to has their ideal target really down like that. Maybe 1 out of 50, and they're selling big services. And I think that's important. So now, what are the trends to make sure that I'm getting it in? I mean, I think one thing is deliverability, but also then making sure it's opened. Obviously that's two different questions, and they're two huge questions. And by the way, you do have an amazing resource too on cold email, right? At quickmail.io. You have a huge book on here, don't you?
Yeah. So I wrote a book, which I put here just for fun. So yeah, here behind me. No one can read it anyway, but it's just fun. And I wrote that book, I think in 2016 or 15. So quite a long time ago. And one day I decided like, hey, still people are still buying this book. How about I do like an updated version? And instead of publishing a new book, I actually just publish it on my website. So it's like that massive article, and you can find it at quickmail.io/cold-email. And if you do that, then you'll find that this massive page with, close to 15,000 words, I think, or something like that.
It is. It is. I'm going to share it real quick. If you're watching the video, watch this on YouTube. You can see right here.
Here we go. Yeah.
Yeah. It is a book, prospecting, list building, which we just talked about, protecting your sender reputation.
Yep. Everything is important.
Get your replies, following up on cold email, cold email metrics, handling replies, what to do with all the money from your cold email. So that said, obviously people are listening to the podcast. They want to know now, how do I get my emails? First of all, make sure that they're getting to the inbox. And second of all, make sure they're getting opened.
Yeah, so that's super important. So obviously there's a few things so I'm not quite sure where I should start, but well, there's a lot of factors. Here's the thing. So there are a lot of factors that can impact it. I would say right now the game is at try to warm up your inbox first. So as we briefly discussed before the cast as to what an auto warmer is it's a software that will take control of your inbox, your personal inbox, which by the way is what QuickMail does. It sends from your inbox instead of MailChimp or other marketing tools. And they use their own server. We use your own inbox. So people see like, oh, it's a personal message. And damn, where was I? Oh yeah. And then it actually will generate we take control of this inbox and we generate some conversation with other inboxes that we know are going to open and sometime even reply. So we'll generate some engagement, which means from a Google or Microsoft perspective, it looks like, this inbox is having good engagement. So we're not going to block them when they are going to try, sending emails to recipient they don't know, because it seems like, the good reply rate and good engagement. And engagement is a key metric at the moment in order to stop, spammers. So the auto warmer is a tool that will generate all those conversation that you don't even need to see, because most of them are auto archived and stuff. But that's basically what an auto warmer does. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think we don't think about, we're just like, I can just send emails to anyone ever, not worrying about whether we're getting engagement, which is crucial to that open rate and or to getting in the inbox. But then we want to get it open too, correct?
Correct. And in 2019, I think there was like that big movement in the industry because Google put in place TensorFlow, and it's all about detecting patterns in order to figure out like, okay, well, those emails, people don't want to listen to them, so we're going to send them to the spam folder instead of sending them to the inbox. And so the auto warmer will also help for that, but there are other things that you need to think and consider. One of the big thing that's been going on for probably a year and a half, something like that, is the intro line or the icebreaker or the personalization line. It's basically a small snippet of text that you're going to put at the beginning of your email, ideally, but not necessarily, that will be different for every prospect you send an email to. So for example, I'll be sending, let's say I'm selling something to you, Ian, maybe you're in my target audience, and I'm going to come, maybe it's a service for, I don't know, helping you out to get more more service, whatever. Okay, I'll tell you one thing. And basically, I will send you an email and I will say something like, hey, I watched your episode with Jeremy, by the way, Ian, I think you could have grilled him a little bit more, or I enjoyed it very much, whatever is the sort of thing, but it's something that I can send only to you. And that's what I mean by a personalization line. So even for you're using automation for sending the email, following up if the prospect doesn't reply and stuff like that, you're still having to sort of personalize each prospect you're sending an email to. And I love to do it in PS as well. But of course, if you do it in the intro, in the beginning, then that sort of like works better. So I like to do both, actually. I like to do the beginning and the PS as well.
Nice.
So that could be a lot of work, but there are ways around that. But overall, that's the idea and the spirit, to help you landing in the inbox rather than in the spam box.
Gotcha. And now open rates. Improving the open rates obviously is crucial, and getting them to reply, which you have a whole chapter in it. But what content are you seeing working really well right now on that? I mean, do you go direct to, here's my service, let's talk about it? Or, I mean, I'm a big fan of value-based emails. Like, here's something you should do right now, and then if you want more help, let me know. But is that the best way? What's the best way you find?
So you have 3 ways to approach this. The first one is the mouse and whisker. Like, I'm basically going to disguise my email, and then you're going to look at my email and you're going to say, like, is it a client or is it someone who tried to sell me something? But if you think this is a client, then you're going to reply to me. It's obvious. And then I reply to you like, oh, I'm asking that because XYZ, right? So it'll be something around like, hey, Jan, would you actually considering, video onboarding for whatever? And then you're going to think, oh, it's someone who is a client. But in fact, no, it's like, oh, that's great, you're offering this because, and then it's hard to flip. I don't like this technique. I think it's misleading. But some people use it. It's good to figure out what I call the market propensity, which is to determine the percentage of people who will open your email if you do a perfect email. So that's never going to happen more. You're never going to get more than it, because in the end of the day, there is no boring way to say someone you won the lottery, right? So the second one is, as you're mentioning, there's a problem here. We're offering this. Is that a problem at your company, right? And the third one is more for networking first, like starting to connect, and then after that, trying to engage into, moving to a sales. I've seen a lot of success with what you propose. So I don't think you have to sort of like delay. At the same time, if you're too aggressive, sometimes it doesn't work. Like, it's almost like, hey, enter your credit card here, do that. It's like you still need to treat cold email as opening a conversation, right? So it's not a marketing sales letter. Actually, they do perform pretty badly if it's too salesy. But if it's too wishy-washy, then you're actually not going to, it's going to be a very long sales cycle, and you're going to lose a lot of time, and you're going to have a lot of people in your funnel that don't act. It's like, so you have a middle ground to figure out. Personally, I think the easiest one is you do intro line or intro, right? Second is value proposition. Third is backupping whatever you're saying, authority, influence. And then the last one is CTA. If you make it very clear, don't beat around the bushes. If you make it very clear, then you have a much greater chance that people will understand, which sometimes you just wonder why people are sending email. They're just so confusing. It's like, I don't understand. What should I do here? So make it very clear, very simple, and then you stand a better chance of getting good results.
Yeah, and I do get that. I feel like emails should be short, especially cold emails should be short and sweet. Is there an ideal length, or is the 2-line, 3-line email a really good one?
So that's funny you're saying that. I've been watching at some stats with my co-host because he keeps on squeezing me with questions like that. So I looked at stats, and it's not 100% accuracy. It tends to be slightly more reply for shorter one, but it's not a massive rule. So it turns out that if your email is interesting and it has some logical flow, and then people can understand, you can get away with relatively long email. But I will say that especially at the beginning, try with shorter one for sure. But too short also backfire. So you have like a sort of like limit. If you go through the 4 like section that I mentioned, then I think you got all the ingredients to get a good cold email.
Okay, great. And what does success, how do I gauge that? When do I go, hey, this is working, or I need to start all over?
Yeah, so let's give you some metrics. 80% reply rate is what you should have. If you have less than 60%, then there is a problem and you should really revisit that. Maybe you're ending up in spam. I would say ideally, once you got your sort of like number, you should remove that. You should remove the open rate, because checking the open rate is impacting the actual results, because you add a little pixel, invisible pixel and stuff like that, and that will hurt your deliverability. So what I do instead is I rely entirely on your auto warmer, which actually will tell you if you end up in the right inbox or not. So I use actually the results of the auto warmer, which is, remember, generating engagement with other inboxes. And that will give you a result as to are you inboxing or not. And so I will rely just purely on that and ignore the open rate. That way I will have a better deliverability while still keeping an eye on what's my sender reputation. That's the first thing.
That's interesting. Yeah, because we all want to track open rates.
Yeah, everyone wants, but that's hurting you.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. It makes complete sense, and because it's not auto magic. There's a pixel that goes in there. Google, Gmail, everyone knows that pixel's there, and
that's right.
And Google's smarter than people think it is.
That's very true.
And so now you say it made 60 to 80% reply rate.
No, open rate.
Open rate.
I was about to come to the reply rate.
Okay.
We do have people with 60, 80% reply rate. Usually they're more in a type of like, hey, I want to buy your business. I got a few millions. Should we have a talk? That sort of thing. Like I say, it's no boring way to say someone won the lottery. So those emails go very well. For the reply rate, however, the game has changed as well. A couple of years back, you needed to have between 20 and 30%. Now it went down. So you have to account for between 10 and 20%. 10% should be what you should aim for, or actually you should achieve before you sort of like stop tweaking stuff, right? If you got less, something's not working. Maybe it's the list building, maybe the value proposition is not clear, maybe the CTA is too weak, all those sort of ingredients. But you should aim between 10 and 20% reply rate. Once you got that, more than 20%, I think, will require more effort than actually the results you're going to get. But
gotcha. I mean, that's still, 20 conversations out of 1,000-person email list. That's
2%.
I mean, yeah, 2%. So 200. Sorry, I was a math major too. I mean, 200 conversations started. That's pretty good.
But it's not exactly right, because some people will just ask you to take a hike, or fly a kite, whatever. So the next metric you still need to consider is your positive reply rate, which means like, yes, they're interested, and then they want to know more, and that should be like about 50%. You should aim for 50%. If you got too much negativity or people telling you rejection, whatever, it's like something may not be quite right here.
Gotcha. And are you tracking how are you tracking the positive reply rate? Are you marking it off, or is that inside of QuickMail? Can you do that?
You can do it inside QuickMail. Some people do it also inside their inbox in Gmail, for example. It becomes difficult when you use inbox rotation. Now, inbox rotation is a great feature, by the way. It helps you to send large volume across multiple inboxes. So each inboxes is sort of like flying under the radar, not sending too many emails. So it's a great feature. And where did I go with that? I forgot. Sometimes I get sidetracked by cool stuff, and I forgot what I was about to say.
No, the tracking the positive reply rate, and
so it's difficult if you have multiple inboxes to track it within Gmail, because then you would have to change the account of Gmail and so on. So in QuickMail, you can set labels, or you can set sentiment. So you could say positive or negative sentiment.
Gotcha. Okay, that's really interesting. And at what point do you take them out of a campaign? Do you keep following up with them forever, or where does that work?
Here's the thing. Ian, do you have a problem with, I don't know, I'll say something random, but it could be like for HR or for hiring some people or for those sort of like problem that will come maybe later or in your business or are already there and so on. It's like a lot of things are timely. So, if I send this email this today to you, maybe you say like, not interested, you will even ignore it. But if I send it in 1 year, maybe you say, oh man, thanks God you actually reached out to me, right? And so the ideal thing will be like, you never stop a campaign, right? But obviously this is tricky because some people will simply flag you as spam every time you send them an email. They won't necessarily unsubscribe to you. So there is a balance here to be made. What I reckon is that try to do 3 follow-ups, right? Leave it cool down for 6 months or whatever, and then retry again. Because at the end of the day, if you end up with a list of 100 or 1,000 people that you really think they're our target audience, you want to have a conversation with them, why would you ever want to drop them? It doesn't make sense, right? Because they will benefit from your product. So what I would say is like you do those 3 emails, and when you do the follow-up, make sure you change the value proposition. Please don't do something like, hey, I hope you read my previous email like a week ago or whatever. It's like, man, I decided to ignore it. I didn't have time, whatever. Give me something else. Like basically, hey, Ian, I also wanted to tell you or to share that, since this last email I sent you, we close 3 other people, if this is like a limited offer, for example. Or I can tell you that, by the way, our product also helps with speed, or it helps reduce cost. But use your follow-up as an opportunity to give more value every time, right? Or more information, so people can make a better decision. And maybe vary the call to action. Maybe in the first one, I'm asking for, hey, can you pick a link on my Calendly? Maybe the second one is like, oh, maybe you just want to join our Slack community. And actually, that worked very well with me, this one. I remember. That's like, no, not interested. And then they say the second one is like, look, we got plenty of other founders. If you want to meet them, I'm like, yeah, I'm down for this one. And so I joined the second one. So anyway, follow up, be mindful about follow-ups.
That's great. That's awesome. So yeah, I mean, this is amazing because I think it's so important. Now, the one thing I want to talk about too, for sure, is how are you, because we create customer stories, a video case for come. How are you, how have you seen them used in cold email outreach? Because I know for me, I used to use them I still use them in outreach, but not really in cold email.
What do you mean exactly? You use them in outreach, but not in cold email?
Well, I'll use them not in cold email. I'll use them in outreach and LinkedIn. Right. I've used them a lot in outreach and LinkedIn. I'll use them in, I'll even sometimes do direct mail. Right. Really haven't said, hey, here's someone like you in cold email. I've used it in more, in inbound, etc., every other place, but never in cold email. Right.
What do you think is going to be different versus actually reaching out to LinkedIn?
I don't know. That's why I had you on, because I want to know if you've seen it, best practices, anything that you've seen. Because to me, it's like, hey, here's someone like you, it's XYZ company was just like you, and here's how they solved that problem. Would you like to see more?
So I usually like to go after VIPs. Now, what I mean by VIPs is someone who will not necessarily be the final end user of my product or service, but someone who will open the door for more people. So, for example, it could be reaching out to influencers, right? Whatever is your service, you reach out to influencers instead of reaching out the end user of your service, right? So that's easier as well, because influencers are looking for sponsors, for example. So they'll be happier to reply. And so you will have a successful cold outreach campaign, right? That way. So I like to go after VIPs. And you have VIPs, different domains, different, like could be retailers for your product, or it could be consultant agencies that will then resell your product to their own clients. So I like that when I go for cold outreach. I'm always thinking, how can I find someone who will multiply the number of people I'm going to reach out? Because otherwise, if you sell, obviously you're not doing that, but if you sell a service for $9 a month or something like that, you're not going to recover, or it's going to be very, very difficult to to get your money back with that level. But of course, for services, that makes sense. For customer videos, that makes sense too. What I would do then is I will use a few tricks. I will use two things, either YouTube, because as you're going to put it into your email, you're going to say like, hey, here's an example of a company just right like you. So you can have an idea of what it will look like for your own, your own company. People are super curious. They would want to see like, okay, how does that look like for my company, for example? And then you have two ways of doing it. The first one is you put a YouTube link. And so when you send the email through, and then people receive it through Gmail, they're going to see the thumbnail on the bottom of their email, because Google automatically put up the link, know it's YouTube, put the thumbnail at the bottom of email. So people will, if you put something funny or like attracting the eye into the thumbnail, you're good. People will click on it. And then you should, monitor your views, right, for your YouTube video. The other approach is you use a Loom video, and then you say like, hey, here's a video again of one of my, one of your competitors, like one of the companies similar to you. You put it as a Loom video, and then the cool thing is, you get notified when someone watched this video, and so you'll know, oh, this person. And even if they are part of Loom, I think you even see the name of who it is who actually watched your video. So there are two things I would encourage you to try. One thing that also work is like asking if they would like to, can I actually make a video for you to actually demonstrate how it will look like for your website? And that way you don't have to do the video before someone actually answer. And of course, you've done the work before, which is like, this is someone I want to work with. I think his company is going to be a good client and stuff like that. You don't propose it for everyone and then waste your time. Again, the advantage of having a very narrow prospect list to start with.
Yeah, I mean, I love that, because it's getting that narrow prospect list, automating it, you get better results faster. And it makes sense, but everyone wants to go, let's spam everyone.
Yeah, see what stick. It doesn't stick.
No.
You get flagged as spam very quickly. Avoid doing that.
It's amazing how many emails I get on a daily basis that have nothing to do with our business, cold emails. And I'm just like, wow, you are way off here. And I'm like,
I get that. From time to time, we tear them down on our podcast. That's always funny. It's sometimes we find some good ones, but they're more the exception than the rule. So we try to find always an interesting one to talk about.
Yes. And so speaking of your podcast, you've got a great podcast on cold email. Tell me what you said it's outreach.
Yeah, cold outreach. What is it, like cold email outreach, I think, with Jeremy and Jack. Anyway, just search that.
It's cold outreach for you.
That's right.
Cold email outreach for you.
That's not our podcast. No, maybe that's a competitor podcast. I don't know.
Well, that's what's on your website.
Oh, is it? Well, maybe. Anyway, go to QuickMail.io and I think /podcast, and then you get the links. There you go.
We'll put the links in the show notes. I'm having fun giving Jeremy a hard time.
I don't mind at all. You can do that anytime, Ian.
I know.
The podcast is done with me and Jack. So I'm the technical guy. I'm the guy who understands the automation, why things are going to spam, and try to prevent you to go into spam. And Jack is an agency lead generation owner. And so he has the battlefield experience, and he's the one who actually need to do the outreach or the prospect list. When QuickMail, you come with your list. I don't do the list for you. So that's a nice little balance. So he comes with a lot of experience from, running his own agency, in terms of sometimes there's some tricky prospecting things to do. And then I come from the actual results and what people are using and the trend and stuff like that, data side. I think it's a healthy balance, healthy mix. And I always have fun, jamming with him. So it's good. Nice. We've been doing it for 4 years, I think.
Wow. It goes by fast. You're like, oh my God, I've been doing this for that long.
That's right.
But it's good that you're consistent. And we'll put a link to that in the show notes. We'll put a link to QuickMail, and also We'll put a link to your cold email Bible. I don't know if it's called a Bible. I'm calling it Bible now.
Nice. I like it. I should rename it.
But awesome. And Jeremy, where's the best place to follow you? Where do you spend your time on social media?
Man, I spend too much time on Twitter, and I say that as it's bad, but I probably spend 10-20 minutes a day or something like that on Twitter, and I think it's already too much. The return on investments on my time on Twitter is pretty lame, and I wonder should I have taken piano lesson instead? 20 minutes every day, I'm sure I'd be pretty damn good by now. Anyway, I think people can just find me on LinkedIn. This is always cool. If you do reach out, do mention you've seen me on the podcast with Ian or some stuff because there's so many bots on LinkedIn, then I won't accept your connection. Other than that, just I don't know, send me an email. That's probably easy to find. What's my email is.
It's funny thing is, funny story, I reached out to Jeremy because we're in a group together, and I just sent a quick email hey, we should connect, and he's like, this isn't good cold email. I'm like, it's not a cold email. It made me cry.
You make it look like I'm really well, I'm a tough cookie, I must admit, but I receive so many cold outreach email. Now I'm I read one line, I'm all right, cold email, let me. So you're one of the lucky one where I actually did reply because I probably was not sure what it was. And yes, that's true. That's you, Ian.
It was fun. It was good. We have a good time talking, and I'm just giving him a hard time. I mean, it's great service. He's super smart. That's, I only have super smart people on here, knows what he's talking about, and a lot of fun. So, but Jeremy, thank you so much for being on. We'll have you on again as email keeps to evolve.
Sure.
And
anytime.
And make sure to check out QuickMail. I mean, I think everyone in the B2B space needs to have a cold email outreach, and it's an amazing software. But thanks again for being on the show.
No, thank you, Ian. I really appreciate jamming with you. It's always fun.
It's always fun. And thank you all for taking Jeremy and I on your journey. This has been Ian Garlic and the Garlic Marketing Show.